I don't recognize myself anymore. Not because I changed, but because I became someone I never was. I molded myself, adjusted, edited out the parts of me you didn't like, and amplified the parts you did. I thought if I could just be the right version, you'd stay. I'm going to tell you something that's going to shatter the illusion and finally help you find yourself again. Ready? You didn't lose them when they left. You lost yourself the moment you started performing. And here's what you don't know yet. You were 8 years old the first time you learned that who you actually were wasn't acceptable. And you've been auditioning for love ever since. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will rewrite everything you thought you knew about why you stayed so long. It wasn't that they didn't love you. It wasn't even that you weren't compatible. It was something so much more permanent. They fell in love with a version of you that didn't exist. You gave them exactly what they wanted, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, pretended to like things you didn't care about, softened your opinions so they wouldn't feel challenged, became quieter when they needed space, more entertaining when they were bored, less emotional when your feelings inconvenienced them. You weren't being yourself. You were being the audition tape. And when they finally left, they didn't leave you. They left the character you'd been playing. And here's what you'll never forget. You knew what you were doing. Every time you swallowed your real opinion, every time you pretended to be fine when you weren't, every time you laughed when you wanted to cry, you felt yourself disappearing. But you told yourself it was worth it. That this is what compromise looks like. That relationships require sacrifice. That love means making yourself easier to love. It DOESN single quotes. And the worst part? They didn't even ask you to change. You just assumed who you were wouldn't be enough, so you started editing yourself before they could reject you. You became a preemptive apology, a walking, talking version of please don't leave me. You weren't in a relationship, you were in a performance. And the longer it went on, the harder it became to remember who you were before the show started. But the real damage wasn't that you lost yourself. The real damage was that you started to believe that performance was who you should be. You looked at the person you became for them and thought, maybe this version is better. Maybe the real me was too much, too opinionated, too emotional, too intense, too loud, too needy. Maybe they were right to prefer this version, and you started policing yourself even when they weren't around. Monitoring your tone, second-guessing your reactions, wondering if the real you would've said it differently. You didn't just lose yourself in the relationship, you started to hate the person you actually were. Because if the real you was lovable, why did you have to become someone else to be kept? And here's the part that breaks you. When they finally left, you didn't know who to go back to, because the person you were before them felt like a stranger. And the person you became for them was someone you never wanted to be. Close your eyes, you're 8 years old again. Can you see it? Can you feel what it felt like to realize, who I am isn't enough? Maybe it was a parent who loved you more when you were agreeable. Maybe it was a teacher who praised you only when you behaved a certain way. Maybe it was the first time someone made you feel like your authentic self was too much to handle. You learned early that love is conditional on performance. That acceptance requires adjustment. That if you could just be less of this and more of that, you'd finally be kept. So you started shapeshifting, becoming the version people needed, reading the room and adjusting accordingly, monitoring reactions to figure out which version of you was most palatable. You became a chameleon, not because you were fake, because you were terrified of being rejected for being real. And that's when the truth revealed itself. Not about them, about the wound you've been carrying since. You were 8 years old, the wound that made you believe authenticity is a liability. The one that whispered, if they see the real me, they'll leave. If I show them who I actually am, I'll be too much. Maybe love is something I earn by becoming what they need. You didn't create that wound. They just confirmed it. So here's the truth. you've been avoiding. The one that's going to hurt more than anything I've said so far. You weren't afraid they'd leave. You were afraid that if you stopped performing, they'd realize there was nothing worth staying for. That's why you kept changing. That's why you couldn't just be yourself. That's why you turned the relationship into an audition that never ended. Because accepting the truth would have meant facing something unbearable. They didn't fall in love with you. They fell in love with the version of you that required nothing from them. And you killed yourself trying to keep that version alive. And then something broke. Not the relationship that had already been dying under the weight of the performance. Something deeper. The belief you'd been carrying since you were 8 years old. The one that said, if I just become what they need, they'll finally love me for who I am. That belief, it finally shattered. The shift didn't happen when they left. Not when they told you it wasn't working. Not when you realized you'd been pretending for years. It happened when you asked yourself a question you'd been running from since the beginning. Not, why wasn't I enough? But why did I think I had to become someone else to deserve love? When you stopped blaming them for not loving the real you, and started asking why you never let them meet her. When you realized the person you betrayed wasn't them, it was you, you stopped performing the day. You realized they didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because the person you became for them was never real, and they could feel it. Here's what you learned when you finally let the mask drop. They didn't ask you to be someone else. You just assumed who you were wouldn't be acceptable. So you shapeshifted before they could reject you. You became what you thought they wanted, instead of asking if they wanted you. And in the process, you robbed them of the chance to love the real you, and robbed yourself of the chance to be loved for who you actually are. You didn't lose them, you lost yourself. And the saddest part, they never even knew the person they were losing, because you never let them meet her. You don't resent them anymore, not the way you used to, because the anger dissolved the moment you realized they didn't reject the real you, because the real you never showed up. Here's what nobody tells you about becoming someone else for love. The person you become might be easier to love, but they're also easier to leave, because there's no depth there, no foundation, no real connection, just a performance, and performances end. You can't build a life on a character. You can only build it on truth, and the truth you hid from them. That was the only thing worth staying for. You're rebuilding now. Not into the person you were before them, into the person you should have been all along. Someone who knows love that requires a performance isn't love, it's tolerance. And you will never again audition for someone's affection. You are releasing the belief that who you are needs editing. You are honoring the parts of you that you varied to keep someone comfortable. You are refusing to shrink, adjust, or perform to make someone stay. You are learning that being loved for a version of yourself you created is lonelier than being alone. And if someone can't love you while you're being real, you walk dot, not because you're too much, not because you're difficult, because you finally know that the right person won't require a performance, because you finally understand the person you became. To make them happy was the reason you were miserable. And losing them wasn't the loss, losing yourself was. So here's the final truth, the one you'll carry forward. You can't be loved for who you are if you never show up as yourself, and pretending to be someone else isn't love. It's self-abandonment with an audience. They didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because who you became for them was never real. And now you know, you don't need someone who loves the edited version. You need someone who doesn't ask you to edit at all. If this landed in your chest like it was written for you, drop a blue heart in the comments. And if you're still becoming someone else to keep someone close, I need you to hear this one more time. They didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because who you became for them was never real. Stop auditioning for love. Stop editing yourself to make someone comfortable. Stop pretending to be someone else, because you're afraid the real you won't be chosen. You don't need someone who loves the edited version. You need someone who doesn't ask you to edit at all. I'll see you in the next one.